Well, why don't I get started and then she can jump in? Okay.
Yep.
So 6:05, and I still need to read the open meeting agenda. So when I identify your name, if you could just respond in the affirmative. Beth?
Yes.
Prabhu?
I'm here.
Lisa?
Here.
Irene?
Here.
Doreen?
Here.
Andy?
Here.
And Mark?
Yep.
Great. Okay. This open meeting of the Library Planning and Building Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Sorry, I don't have my regular thing here, so. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting features public comment. For this meeting, we are convening by Zoom call. And I don't know, are we being recorded when we do this? Yeah, okay. And that some attendees are participating by video. There's nobody by video conference. So I guess we are all set. So let's see, we just want to go over the the current budget, Andy, and look at the IT.
Yeah, so that's really the whole reason for this is basically the IT numbers came in, and instead of, we had a schematic or a conceptual budget of $80,000. When the initial numbers came in, they came in around, I forget, it was like $94,000, which for the equipment. So that's, if you look at it and go, all right, well, it's an old number and there's escalation every year, 80 turns into 92 or 94. We're pretty close in terms of making a guess early on and then coming in with the equipment. The big difference is that there are some significant items that are actually just infrastructure. Well, it's half infrastructure and part IT time that, wasn't part of a conceptual budget. Conceptual budget doesn't really get done like that. It's more square footage based. And so we had, some IT switching, some wireless system, and the time for Coughlin to do all this, they're ordering it, they're receiving it, they're configuring it, and they're setting it all up and installing it and testing it. It's a fair amount of time. So that's really why that number went from, the conceptual budget number of 80,000 to where we are now at 153,000. Some pretty significant difference, but some pretty significant scope difference as well. It's not just, computers and laptops and things like that. It's some infrastructure stuff as well. So that's why I wanted to get this group together. That's on the cost side. On the plus side, of course, is that, Doug announced last time that we were getting $225,000 of outside funding. So that more than offsets what this looks like and puts us in good shape overall. I mean, we weren't out of money yet, anyways. Let's not forget that. So, but I wanted to push this IT piece ahead so that we could keep the ball rolling and get these things ordered and get them configured before they needed to be in the building, which is why I was kind of pushing for this meeting to happen before next week's meeting.
Okay.
Andy, do you have a sense as far as lead times of the longest lead time of the items that we're talking about? Is anything bad?
I don't believe so, Mark. No, I think it's all pretty straightforward stuff. It's just it's less the lead time to order it than it is to get everything
Configure it, right?
and configured. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I had a couple of questions on it. So With the, wouldn't the switches and all that be part of the contract? Not so much the contract, but not just conceptual. Usually the town has to pay for that and there's a budget number in there. And wouldn't that have been thought of? Because you can't do anything without those switches and coordination between the terminations that the contractor makes and the IT equipment itself.
Yeah, it does seem like a little bit of a gap, and Mark, maybe you can talk about this too. I mean, some of this stuff, it's infrastructure to me. I mean, I look at it and go, I didn't really realize that. So for the wireless systems, the conduit and wire is part of the project, but the devices themselves that you see up on the wall or in the ceiling are purchased by us. So there's a little funny little division here that I didn't anticipate, I guess, that was on us for some of this stuff.
Okay, because typically that is how it goes. And I was just wondering why the town hadn't thought about that and put it into maybe FF&E or into something. So that was one question. Beth, do you want to expand on that?
I just wanted to say that even if it was something that the expectation was the town would pay for it, it still should have been included in that initial estimate. And I think it's an oversight. And it's a frustrating oversight to find out about this late date.
Sure, that was my big question, because usually that is there is a number for that, because you have to have two parties come in and marry up at the end of a project to make it all work.
Yep, I was pretty shocked at the scope of this one.
Okay, all right. And when you say we're not over budget to date, can you tell us what that number is that we had left before this amount?
I mean, it was in my last cost report. It was 70. $77,565 is where we were before we got the influx of cash.
Oh, okay. So when you say we had a conceptual budget of 80,000, does that number, do we actually have 80,000 budgeted for that?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then you said we had 70,000 before, so we'd still be under budget to use this money, because it would be almost 153 with the 80,000 and the 70,000.
Yeah, it would just without the outside funding, we'd be essentially down at zero, right? And we're still not done with the rest of the project. Right.
Okay. And then my other question, then I'll let other people speak too. My other question would be, what are the people that donated this money? Are they aware that this is going to oversight or contract work or what have you? Or does it matter?
It's unrestricted. This is an unrestricted donation. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And if the stuff for the outside for the landscaping were earmarked for certain individual projects. These monies were just to the overall construction project
Okay.
to be used as needed.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have questions?
I have a question. Go ahead, Lisa. Finish.
Lisa?
I have two questions. What was that amount that we had? It was $77,000. Can you say that one more time for the minute?
77,565.
565. Excellent. So I guess I don't understand. So I'm going to need it explained one more time. I'm sorry, Andy. So we thought there was 80,000. It was going to be $80,000. Then it came back at 94,000. Where's this $153,000 number coming from now?
So there's a few different pieces to this, the whole IT umbrella, right? There's stuff like laptops and tablets and PCs, right? So that's the original 80 that turned into 92 or 94. There's the second piece is this infrastructure piece, which is IT switching, wireless system. That's the second component. And then the third piece is our IT consultant's time, the IT consultant for the town, Coughlin. It's their time to to receive all these things, to configure them, set them up, install them, test them. So that was it's a significant piece of time. There's a lot of pieces of equipment that have to be brought in, taken out of boxes, software loaded, all that stuff. It's a serious piece of time. So that's the third piece.
So when would that have been quoted or added into our budget or into the project? At the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
And then
Babu?
is this half
Go ahead.
reimbursed? Oh, sorry. Is this half reimbursed by the state? No,
No.
this is all us. Thank you.
Okay, Prabhu?
I was going to ask something similar to what Lisa was asking. If you look at the 80,000, the initial IT budget, in background, I'm in IT. I started in construction for 20 years. I've been sitting in IT. It always bugs the life out of my business partners when we go with the 100% scope increase or 100% increase in the cost, right? And now this is us sitting on the other side of the fence. Think about 80,000, there is a number and there is a scope of work. Did that include all your three buckets that you talked about? And did that 80,000 include the three buckets or two buckets or one bucket?
I have no way of knowing probably what that $80,000 included. I don't, honestly, I don't know.
I think
It
if
was
you
more of
broke,
a thumb rule. Sorry.
I think if you broke that $80,000 assumption down, the quantities of tablets and flat screens and Wi-Fi devices into individual devices, I'm sure that number was lower than we ended up with. But it's kind of a square foot analysis, Andy mentioned, based on the historical data and the square footage of the library. You're going to need $80,000-ish. And there was a 4% escalation clause over the 3 years and so forth. So we're in the mid 90s for equipment. So that was a good budget just for the equipment, but not to connect and configure all the equipment.
Or are we buying more equipment? Somewhere something seems to be off, right? If the thumb rule 2 years ago was based on some metrics, and the metrics said that if you had 10,000 square feet of library space, your thumb rule is going to be $250 per square foot or something of that, some arbitrary number. That would have included all the cost of acquisition based on 15 projects, 20 projects that whoever came up with those benchmarks provided us. One way to look at it is those numbers were wrong. The other way I see is maybe we are getting more stuff. And did we not anticipate that additional stuff? Is there something in between, or this is too much of a variation? Very uncomfortable from this variation.
I don't think we're getting more. I don't think we're getting more scope than we needed, just in terms of equipment, right? Beth is shaking her head no as well. I don't think we're not getting 50% more laptops or anything like that. I think the list of equipment has been pretty static. I just think it's the infrastructure and installation piece. Beth.
Yeah.
I will say that said, what we had budgeted for was up to 40 combination of laptops and tablets to go in 4 different like remote charging stations, some which might be mobile like you'd find in a school, some which might be mounted on the wall and self-service. And I think that I had said at one point that we could cut to, instead of expecting 10 devices in every one of those 4 units, we could cut down to 6 to open with. But then at some point we have to, eventually fill those up based on demand. And we'll be coming back to the town to say, hey, we need another $24,000 or whatever to buy more equipment. And that's not going to pass. I know that it won't fly. So if it was budgeted for and was original scope, if we can afford to do it, then we should do it. But if we need to cut, then, reduce from 10 per 4 of those units to 6. And we're already going to be making some of that up with refurbished laptops from staff and patron computers from the past. So they're not all going to have even brand new components in them to begin with.
So the list that we have, one of your attachments of the laptops that is listed out there, that is not all the laptops. There is more laptops outside of this.
No, that's the list.
That's the list.
It includes staff computers as well. And remember, we have individual workstations for everybody,
Right.
just about. So that also. And all of our computers are 5 or more years old. So we've been squeaking by with them with the plan that we would be purchasing new computers for all staff and all patrons with the new building.
Okay, my last question, sorry, I know you looked at your hand 3 times up. So
Well,
last question. So 90,000 is all equipment. And then I'm seeing 25,000, 24,780 is Coughlin. And so that's about 115,000. The remaining 35,000 is Andy, as you call the IT, the infrastructure cost of installation, drawing the cables, creating the plug points and so on and so forth. Is that how we are seeing the 150 change?
In my email, I did mention that there are still some pieces that have not been purchased yet, where I'm waiting on some final pricing. So there are still a few items that I've got estimates on, but I don't have final pricing on. So that's why there's a little bit of a delta in there.
Okay. Go ahead, Irene.
Irene?
so I'm curious, somewhere along the line, we said part of this is the money we're paying to Coughlin because they're kind of our IT outsourced, so to speak. If we had someone in-house, because that's one of the things I know that's being looked at right now is transitioning, from having IT outsourced to having IT in-house, would this be work that we would then otherwise have an in-house person doing? I mean, I know it's not going to make any difference for our project because we can't wait for that to happen. I recognize that. I'm just curious.
Yes, is the short answer.
Okay.
Can I add on to Irene's point? The 25,000 is actually not a lot when you think about it. On an average, you're talking about $150 an hour. If you calculate that, it's less than 160 hours, 1 person month of effort. Overall. That's not a big number when you look at from an IT cost for installations, software updates and stuff. I was.
Prabhu, you're fading in and out.
I've been using the same thing. It's tired. I've been using the same thing for the last 12 hours in the call.
That's fine. That sounds good.
So this moves that I was saying this 25,000 for Coughlin is not a big number when you do the calculation, right? On an average, you're looking about $150 an hour for all this installation, unpacking, and so on and so forth. That's about 1 person month. That's not a big number. It's the rest of the stuff that seemed to be significant. The 80, 90, that appears to be a lot. That makes me very uncomfortable.
Again, I think it's, I think it was missed, is because usually the owner would be the person that supplies all the switches and all the IT connections and all the plugins. So all the cabling's there, correct, Andy?
Correct.
Right. So the contractors installed all of the cabling and the devices, and they've terminated back in the closet. And now the town needs to go in and connect it all up and put in the equipment. So that's where all of that is. And I think that the number is not so far off by Coughlin and the install and the equipment that all the switches that you have to buy and the network connections. I don't think it's all that far off. It's just, I think it was not carried in the budget. So I think that's the unfortunate part. And then what do we do about that? We can't open a library without, having these things connected.
Right.
So, I mean, I hate that we're using it for, all that donated money is being used for this when it should have been part of or thought of, I guess, but it is unrestricted. So we do have to think of that. So, that's my 2 cents on it.
If Doug was here, he would tell you that money was supposed to be used to defray the cost of the project to the town. So we wouldn't have to borrow as much. So it's an appropriate use of the money.
Okay. All right.
And this is what a contingency is for. It's for things like this that come up, right? Like we're just cutting it really close because we sent some of it to the DPW. We would be turning back a decent amount of money at this point of the project or when we were done if we didn't already give it to the DPW.
What money did we give to the DPW?
Did we give the $1 million to the DPW? No, we never did. Oh,
No.
Beth's shaking her head no. Sorry.
He went to soil. So
Right.
dump trucks were involved, but
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought we transferred it to the DPW project. My
yeah,
apologies.
we weren't allowed to do that. But we lost what, 2.2 million in moving contaminated soil. So that's why we have no contingency.
Right.
And that's why when things escalate at a reasonable cost, we're like, why is that so expensive? Well, we would have been able to absorb that had we not spent all that money moving the soil. And I am looking at the original budget estimate. There's nothing in here for IT infrastructure. So it was just left out of the estimate.
It was just a, right, it was just a percentage of the overall cost. It does, the lesson, certainly the lesson for me is that when we go to transition from a conceptual budget to an actual budget, we need to look more closely at things like this. Any of the other, owner costs that may be out there to sort of build those things in as soon as possible, because, the conceptual budget is just that. It doesn't have much detail. It's a percentage or it's a square footage based thing. And so you can't really pick it apart because there's no detail there.
Right.
And I also want to say, if it is infrastructure, it still may be eligible for some of the partial reimbursement, depending on how all the other things that are reimbursable play out. Like if we had thought that we were getting reimbursed for something that we spent less money on, like at the end of the day, they'll still give us up to 7.4 million. They won't give us more, but it might be that some of that is still reimbursable.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything more to add? Yeah, Doreen.
I've just been listening, a lot of great questions, and just a comment, in my opinion, I feel like, this discussion of these unrestricted funds, and I think, Mary, it was you who said, you can't open a library without this infrastructure and this IT in there. So, that's what makes me more comfortable with it, is it's like, it's a priority. It's something we have to do. I guess one thing I'm confused on, and I apologize, I have a dog that's just lapping me right now. If you hear dog feet, he really wants my lap and I'm not allowing it. So you just hear this pitter patter. But a question I have is, I just want to understand, how does this affect the overall budget? Meaning, you say that we're not over budget to date. I understand we have this 225,000 of outside funding that we could use toward this scope difference. As we move forward and get to the end of this project, how is this going to affect the budget? Like, would we anticipate in any way having to cut in other areas because of this decision? I guess is what I'm coming down to.
I wouldn't see that right now physically in the site. For the most part, I'm generalizing, but they're off the second floor with the finishes, the carpet, the flooring, the painting, the ceilings, the light fixtures, and they're down to the first floor doing all of that while that's happening. So the opportunity to generate questions, we're past that, or generate field-driven issues, we're kind of past that. On the exterior, they're prepping for all the base contract work. And the new work that's being pegged, that's been earmarked for outside, is going to be funded by donor, earmarked by donor contributions. So I don't see any field-driven changes. They would be more owner. It's too bad that it's not the end of the project. You have some money and you want to add IT, or you want to add furniture or whatever.
Yeah.
And to, I think, Beth's point earlier, if you took all the money spent on contaminated soils and you just took that dollar value out of the project or put it back into the project, the percentage that you've spent on change orders against the whole of the project is very reasonable. It's the contaminated soils that throws everything out of whack.
Right.
But with the additional funds from the friends and the donors, I don't see, I mean, we're closer than we had hoped, but I don't see any field-driven changes at this point.
So the one piece that I know of that is going to have to be dealt with is actually exiting the interim library. So we're over budget on what we spent on that building already. I did build in the extra time, the extra rent that we've been paying, and I did build in some money to exit, to have to undo some of what we did in there. But that was, again, sort of an estimate on what I thought it was going to cost to have the electricians come back and take stuff out that we put in. So that's a little, I don't want to call it a wild card, but that is one item that's sitting out there that we need to, we're still going to need to address on our way out of the building.
Okay. Do we have a plan with that? Like when we're going to be giving up that lease? Is it for the year or?
It's not for the year, it's month to
Okay.
month. So
Okay.
right now, our movers are telling us that they can't move us until July 12th. So regardless of the completion of the building, movers are solid booked until July 12th. So that week they can move us. So we'll have rent through the month of July.
Okay.
But we should be able to get out of the building in 2 weeks or less.
Good. Thank you for all this clarification.
I'm sure.
And Andy, could we get how much the, yeah, Mark, you were saying that, if it wasn't for the contaminated soils, we would have our change orders would be very low. Could we get that number for Monday, just to know what the percentage is on the
I can-
project?
Yeah, I can resurface. I sent it around once, but I'll pull it up again and just verify it and send it. on.
Yeah, I just wanted to get it to date so that we
Yeah.
have an idea, because people do ask, so.
Yeah, it hasn't, I mean, in terms of 2 months ago to now, it hasn't really changed, I don't think significantly, because any change orders we've had have been pretty small relative to the site work, but I'll refresh it and have it for next week.
Yeah, and just pull out the soil so
Yeah.
we get a better number.
Yep.
That'd
It's a
be
good- I
great.
mean, it is a good number without the soils.
Okay, great. Okay. So what do you think? Are you guys ready to vote? Okay, let's go in for a vote. So first we'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to increase, tell me if this is right, Andy, increase the IT budget to $153,000.
Sure.
I'll second the motion.
Perfect. Okay, by roll call. Beth,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Irene,
Aye.
Doreen,
Aye.
and Mary. Aye. Okay. So it's a go, Andy.
Awesome,
Go,
thank you.
go spend.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's good. I just want to keep things moving. I really do appreciate the fact that everybody took some extra time out to do this. We'll have a full update for you next week, but we'll just keep this process moving along. So thank you all very much.
Okay, thanks, everybody. So it's,
I make a motion to adjourn at 6:33.
Yep. Okay, all right. All those in favor, Beth,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye, and I saw Irene second it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Irene. You're good, Irene? I
Aye,
didn't hear-
yes.
Yes, yes. Doreen
Aye.
and Mary, aye. Excellent. Now we're done.